You know, when you think about it, this year has been a very strange time for video games because we've gotten some exceedingly fun experiences dropping during the course of the last 12 months, but we also got some absolute dumpster fires. Like, actually think about the fact that this year we had some freaking masterpieces like Brave the Default 2 or Returnal, which became a gigantic fan favorite, and these are released near something like Balan. What we're going to do today, though, is something very specific, which is dive to the bottom of the trash heap and find the most despicable garbage that came out in 2021. Are you ready? Buckle up, because these are my picks of the top 10 worst games overall from 2021. Number 10. Hell Let Loose. Within the world of first-person shooters, there's a couple major subgenres, stuff like arena shooters, horror shooters, or in this case, a military simulator. Now, these games are not supposed to be fun, at least that's what people tell me. They're supposed to be slow and spooky. They should be terrifying, because even getting hit once in war typically means you're already dead. Hell Let Loose is very much a military simulator. This is supposed to replicate the actual horrors of war that existed during World War II. Which is great, except for the fact that it's definitely not entertaining. About 90% of every single match is just spent crawling around in the mud or being lost looking for an opponent to fight, and by the time you do actually encounter somebody, they're probably in a tank or a sniper a mile away. This really is one of those games that may be realistic, but it's certainly not something I would ever recommend. Number 9. Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance. The D&D universe is something I have a very big soft spot for, because they've managed to create these decades of lore. Like, if you ever actually decide to read any of the Dungeons & Dragons books or look into the tabletop RPG, they've managed to create such a wide range of monsters and heroes, might and magic. I've always kind of appreciated the fact that they managed to establish so much over the course of its existence. But for some reason, most of the Dungeons & Dragons games absolutely suck, and unfortunately, this one is included. Dark Alliance is intended to be like a hack and slash co-op adventure, but holy heck is it a glitchy, freaking boring mess. Like, the problem is that it's very, very simplistic. You spend a lot of time going through these very easy dungeons again and again, getting some very basic loot that you can't even look at until you leave the dungeons. This is a game that's filled with half-finished ideas, very broken mechanics, and completely unbalanced characters. Seriously, there is no reason to play this, and it's disappointing because I do kind of enjoy the cutscenes and nothing else. Number 8. Evil Inside. Alright, so there's a good chance you've never even heard of this project, but I decided to dig it directly out of the dumpster to explain to you why this is such a freaking mess. Evil Inside is pretty much an exact ripoff of freaking 2014's playable teaser for Silent Hills, originally called PT Demo. Now, you'll probably notice that they decided to copy the aesthetic, the art style, the graphics, the lighting. Like, straight up, this is some practically copyright infringement to PT Demo. But what disappoints me is where PT Demo managed to establish this very heavy sense of dread by making you trapped inside this house. Evil Inside manages to make this feel lazy. Evil Inside is just this hallway. This is literally the entire game. You walk in one side of the house, you come back into the other side of the house. Occasionally there's some jump scares as ghosts show up and stuff, but this game is so basic, I cannot believe they actually charged money for it. This sucks because it doesn't even attempt to try and innovate. This indie title is just a blatant cash grab. Number 7. Necromunda Hired Gun. There's been a big debate lately about which video games are too hard or which video games are too easy, but what about a game that's just too boring to beat? Necromunda is a game where you're essentially playing as a mercenary trapped in this gigantic world. You're a bounty hunter who takes down targets that are just too ruthless to leave alive. The problem is that the game is incredibly fast. You run like you're just smoking the finest crack cocaine, but more than that, it is incredibly freaking basic. Every single enemy that you encounter during this entire game from start to finish is seemingly been lobotomized. I mean, they are so stupid they can hardly even move around the room. Like, these people just wait for you to get shot in the face. Like, that's it. They just stand there and let you blast them. In fact, a lot of times I would run up and just stab people and they stand there. Like, This game is very clearly unfinished. I absolutely hate games that have zero depth, and this is that. Like, straight up, I spent the entire game just walking around blasting people who hardly fight back until the ending credits. Hired Gun, honestly, is a good name for this game because you should have to be paid to play it. Number 6. Battlefield 2042. I'm a bit conflicted as to where I should put this in the list, because we all know that Battlefield 2042, as it currently exists, is a totally destroyed pile of code. It's pretty much unplayable. In fact, it's now one of the lowest reviewed games ever on Steam. It's bleeding players by the tens of thousands, and it's all because the game itself is just so poorly balanced. At any time, there's flying vehicles, people trying to glitch outside the environment, and even the guns themselves just hardly work. While the environments may be beautiful, and it's certainly epic to get caught in a tornado while wearing a windsuit, I mean, most of the time it's difficult just to get across the map without actually breaking the game itself. Battlefield 2042 is something that personally I despise. I wish this could have been the proper Call of Duty killer that I hoped it could be. Instead, it's just yet another complete dud for 2021. Number 5. Taxi Chaos. Okay, so obviously I'm a big fan of the Dreamcast. I have every single Dreamcast game, I play through the Dreamcast games again and again, and it makes me a big fan of stuff like Crazy Taxi. Now, this game originally was based on the Sega Dreamcast, and it had a chance to run through this big digital city, picking up people, landing fares, and listening to some pretty good soundtracks. But even I can admit that the original Crazy Taxi, it didn't age the best. It's a game that definitely is a product of its time period. Well, Taxi Chaos is a blatant knockoff of Crazy Taxi. Now, what's weird about this is that this is still published by Sega, so in a weird way, this sort of feels like the next official Crazy Taxi, except for the fact that it only has the problems of the original game. Being able to jump my car and go through these empty environments, like straight up Taxi Chaos feels like a downgraded version of the original Crazy Taxi that came out 20 years ago. How do you manage to be outdated of a game that's 2 decades past its expiration date? Taxi Chaos more than just annoys me, it disappoints me. It makes me wish we had an actual Crazy Taxi game, because this ain't it, chief. Number 4. Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood. What's the first thing that pops into your mind when you imagine stuff like Werewolf gameplay? Probably things like howling at the moon, shredding off your clothes, and chasing down some very deserving targets. But Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood, it manages to do that, but in the most boring way possible. You see, we're perhaps way too strong. In this game, you absolutely shred everybody that comes close to you. Cops, soldiers, military personnel, security guards, like everybody just gets instantly eviscerated in this game. And that's kind of the problem of it, is that if anything, you're way too overpowered. I beat this game in 5 hours, and that was doing side quests, and it's mostly because pretty much every target I ran into was dead in less than a second. Even the boss fights, which of course are against other werewolves and stuff sometimes, feel incredibly underwhelming. Like, part of the problem with this game is that not only is it incredibly repetitive, I mean, you could seriously beat the entire game just pressing punch, but more than that, it feels like this game is just undercooked. It feels like they decided to establish some cool graphics and some nice art style for the characters themselves, and then just went, alright, print it onto a disc. Earthblood at times feels like it's trying to make a statement about global warming or talking about the problems with evil corporations, but it's just so half-assed. Nothing about this game feels fleshed out and complete, and even as I was shredding my clothes for the 100th time to become my serious werewolf self, I couldn't possibly care. Number 3. Hood, Outlaws, and Legends. We all know the classic fairy tale of Robin Hood, the famous thief who stole from the rich to give to the poor. But what if you decided to do that to yourself? What if you and your friends decided to team up and in a mythological world, I'm not telling you to commit any crimes, you decide to steal a bunch of gigantic treasure chests to make sure that everybody gets fed? That's the essential premise of Hood, Outlaws, and Legends. You are criminals, but you're criminals doing a very deserving purpose. The issue with this game, though, is that it sets up premises that it doesn't know how to follow through on. Like, basically the whole thing is that you are a series of people trying to break into these forts, sneak in here, get some keys, and walk out with huge treasure chests exploding with booty. But the problem is that there is just mechanics in this game that are completely unnecessary. Like, straight up, they spend a big part of the tutorial teaching you how to stay out of sight. They claim that it's very dangerous to get spotted. There's this whole alarm system, but the game is very dumbly built. There are different classes in this game that are more centered on the idea of being hidden or being out in the open, but for some reason, they decided to make melee combat incredibly overpowered. So because of it, now that the player base knows this, we walk in, hammer everybody to death, kill the guards, and walk away with the loot incredibly scot-free again and again and again. Outlaws and Legends is one of those projects that may be very visually appealing and cool to look at with its great lighting systems and stuff, but I'd rather watch a movie based in this universe than ever actually play this game again. Number 2. Destruction AllStars. So clearly there's a lot of bad stuff on this list. In this video there's a lot of games that are unfun, unfinished, or just straight up unplayable, but Destruction AllStars is very interesting to me because this game is already dead. What was originally promised to us was essentially a more bright and colorful knockoff of Twisted Metal. It was a game that has car combat and cool arenas and lots of big explosions all around us, but in the end, the servers died in less than 3 months. Like, straight up, if you get onto this game right now, there are no players, which means that this game, which is online only, going against other players, is a completely hollow freaking arena at this point. There's nothing to do. I mean, technically you can do some bot matches, but trying to finish off the daily quests and unlock new cosmetics in a world with no other players feels completely freaking empty. Like, I'm still just shocked that this is a PlayStation 5 game that they gave away for free with PlayStation Plus, and nobody is even here to enjoy it. This game sucks for a lot of reasons, but let's just face it, the biggest testament to its failure is the fact that nobody even cares that it still exists. Number 1. Balan Wonderworld. I totally hate this game, and I'm one of the few people that managed to finish it. This is created by the guy who did Nights into Dreams and stuff, but wowzers, is it a very, very strange project. Now, the core problem with Balan Wonderworld is the fact that this is a one-button video game. You can move around, you can change the camera angles and stuff, but basically, there is only one button, which is use ability. So instead of just being able to press jump or run around or being able to freeze people or whatever the heck, basically what you do is you go around the map and find costumes that give you different abilities, things that let you punch to break blocks or double jump or sometimes fly for a short amount of time, and that is how the entire game works, is essentially collecting costumes that you could use in very specific circumstances. Now, the problem with this is that it's just not fun. Like, this incredibly childish cartoon graphics is annoying at times. The fact that the boss fights are so repetitive can be annoying, but the real crux of this is that it's just a very flawed premise. Like, a one-button video game can never actually be that fun. Like, the fact that you spend all these hours just collecting costumes to use in singular circumstances makes it feel like this giant seek and find puzzle. And the problem is that even when you get some of the coolest outfits, things that let you turn yourself into a gear or fly for a short time, or even like a supersonic style costume that lets you run really fast, even at its very best, the game still sucks. Like, straight up, even at the pinnacles, the brightest moments of Balan Wonderworld, I still would not recommend it even if you got it for free. This game, from the very opening credits to the very ending credits, is a dumpster fire. It is something I actually regret playing. If I could reach in my brain and erase the memory of it, I undoubtedly would. Do not play this game, but I am awarding it my pick as the absolute worst game of 2021. Did your most hated game not make the list? Got an idea for a future top 10? Please leave it in the comments down below, because I'm sure we'll all enjoy reading what you despised more than anything else. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a gigantic thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. Next week, we're going to be counting down the best games of 2021, so also feel free to put something you feel like is an underappreciated hidden gem. I have some ideas of what I think is the best, but I'm always curious y'all's feedback. Much love. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.